Hello and welcome back to El Partido, yet another Spanish football podcast. And it is Series 3, guys. Series 3, and we've got an opening weekend of football coming up soon. I am absolutely buzzing for it. And I'm also buzzing to be joined by my fantastic co host once again, Paul McGarrihy. Welcome back to El Partido. How are you doing?
Hi, Nick. It's great to be back. I'm doing very well, refreshed after the summer, and more than happy to be back delivering Series 3 of El Partido, which, the time flies, doesn't it? Series 3 already. And I'm fairly certain we've definitely surpassed 50 odd episodes now, surely. I'm not, I
Yes.
don't even know what the count is, but we
I think
are,
I think
yeah.
when you take El Partido and Directos and things like that, we're maybe just shy of a centenary. However, because of how diverse our content is nowadays, that's a small nod to La Cronica. If you haven't listened to La Cronica yet, our Tuesday episode, go back and listen to that on all that there. However, yeah, we are not far off a century of episodes, Paul, which is like I say, when we first started this, who would have thought that we would be going into a third series? The people that we've spoken to, the guests that we've had, and we've still got a lot more planned and a lot more to come, including this very episode here tonight as well. Because in celebration of the return of Spanish football this weekend, obviously we are getting it's La Liga 2, La Liga High Promotion that kicks us off.
Mm.
Technically, I think it's Real Sociedad Bay against Castellon, if I'm not mistaken, on Friday night. But then we're back into a full calendar of La Liga and La Liga 2 fixtures as well. So, to celebrate that, we're going to talk today about our favourite opening games of the weekend and debuts, which I feel like we've spoken about doing this kind of episode before, Paul, many, many times. But I think we've always gone, well, there's only one time of the year that we can actually do that episode, and it's got to be now. So we are doing it, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what, over the summer, so we've obviously, we've had holidays and things, and we've been working on stuff. And there's been times where like the ideas have been going through my mind and making notes ahead of the new season and thinking, oh well, let's do an episode on this or not. And there's been quite a few times where I've thought to myself, oh, we've done an episode on that. Oh no, we haven't. And like it's the idea's been there, but we've not got around to recording all the things that we want to record about. So I guess that's a bit of a double-edged sword. It means it's great in the sense of we've got so much to look forward to and yet to cover, which means that there's an abundance of content for people that's still to come in the future. And then on the other side of it, it also means that I'm slightly losing my mind and getting stuck in the um, did we record that? Did that actually happen, or did we just talk about doing it and didn't get around to recording?
I just feel I need to just look down the lens and say, Sidlow, it's happening this season, this series. We are doing a Real Oviedo episode with Sidlow. It's got to happen. So that's sort of the primary aim for that one this year. But
Yes.
again, as far as this topic's concerned, we have spoken about it a few times because opening weekends the Spanish do them so well. They do them justice, and some of the most mental, craziest things happen, along with debuts as well. Always seems to be quite a fun one. So sort of like picked four or five incidences, is that the right word to use, or events that might be more apparent, and some other ones that I'm sure definitely pop into our heads. For example, like Barcelona turning Levante over 7-0 on an open weekend. What a welcome return to La Liga that must have been for the Valencians. But first, speaking of Barcelona, I want to dial the clock back to the 31st of August 2008 because it often when you open a season, you get these new fixtures pop up, don't you, Paul? A newly promoted side goes up against a behemoth of the league. It's a giant versus David or David versus Goliath kind of story. A giant versus David. That's just a giant fight. Um, and in 2008, we got one, didn't we? With Numancia against Barcelona. So, again, Numancia, this fantastic club who have had plenty of seasons in the top division, mainly been in around the second and third tiers in existence and are currently on their way back up through the system. Currently in the Segunda Ref at the moment, I believe. However, on this day, they were going up against the might of Barcelona with it all to play for.
Yeah, absolutely. So cast your mind back, I guess, to 31st of August 2008. As you say, Numancia, newly promoted. The game kicks off at Los Parajitos, and as you mentioned, it's Pep Guardiola's first game in charge of the Barcelona senior team, having been promoted from his role as Barca B coach, which, if not by the time you're listening, but certainly very, very soon, there will be a very short article available on our Substack to read a little bit about how he became the Barca B coach. Anyway, there we go. First digression of the season on El Partido. Yeah, so it was a mismatch, you would say. Newly promoted side versus a Barcelona that, consisted of a young Lionel Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Samuel Eto'o, and who else? There was Dani Alves, Carlos Puyol.
Puyol, PK, you name it, they had them, didn't they? So again,
Yeah,
it,
Abidal.
this comes down though to that one main thing, and what makes this sort of crazy was the fact that it was Pep Guardiola's first game, and as I'm sure you'll read in your Substack article, Paul, this was the choice that was made, wasn't it? Pep was the choice that they went with, but it wasn't necessarily the one that they were going to go with. Obviously, there was talks about Mourinho coming in. There was obviously a few other names. I think the likes of who's the Dutch fella called? His name just eludes me now. Who was manager recently? Who was manager of Southampton and Everton?
Ronald
Look up this
Koeman.
Ronald Koeman, that was it. He was being touted as well for the job. You can tell that we're rusty, can't you, Paul? Ronald Koeman was sort of like in the running as well, potentially. All these different names were sort of being bandied, and obviously they elected to go with, a disciple of Cruyff, Pep Guardiola, promoted from Barca Athletic, and took it over. And this was the real litmus paper for that, wasn't it? This was the opportunity for him to lay down a marker where he'd go, right, this is my team, this is the way that we're playing, and stick to those principles. This couldn't have gone more against the plan that Pep had, if it was possible. Bearing in mind as well, when you look back over that Numancia team, there's nobody of sort of like general note. There have been other teams who have come up from the Segunda division. I'm thinking like your Recreativo de Huelvas, for example, who had I'm going to say a phrase that I don't think anyone's ever said before, but a prime Florent Cinema Pongol up front. There was no one in this Numancia team that you could pin a hook on like that. It was very much a team of players who'd got themselves into the promotion picture, who had added a couple of experienced heads to this squad, and then were put out in front of Pep's Barcelona. It like I said before, is a David versus Goliath scenario. But I tell you what, if you watch these highlights back, Paul, Numancia know how to bloody defend. They are such a great unit in this game, and they know that they're sort of the anaesthetist to Barcelona in this, because and we heard this saying over and over again this summer, they employed that low block, they managed to just let Barcelona play in front of him, and they caught them on the counter-attack, and after 13 minutes, the home side are ahead, and it must have been unfathomable to those Barcelona players thinking at that time, oh, what is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of hectic, starts to the season, if you're watching rather than listening, you'll have seen me accidentally knock over my microphone. So, very on brand, isn't it, for this episode? Rusty
Cheers.
starts, I suppose.
You need to ask San Pellegrino. San Pellegrini for forgiveness. If you are watching on YouTube, you'll note that we've got our good friend Manuel Pellegrini on the wall now. But yeah, it is all sorts of chaos. We sounded
Yes,
so professional on La Cronica, Paul. That's just what we like now on El Partido.
I
Uh,
know, isn't it? We revert to type, yeah. Um, yeah, was a chaotic first game of the season for Guardiola's side, but as you say, the Numancia team, it was a combination of will as much as skill, the determination, so organized defensively, a lot of heart, a lot of effort, which, I suppose first game of the season in front of their own fans back in the top flight, naturally there's going to be that extra 5 or 10% that you get from the energy and the noise that's created in the stadium, and um, the buzz and the excitement of the occasion. But they didn't let the occasion get to them at all. They hit Barcelona head on, really, as being, as equals. There was no inferiority complex within the way Numancia played. The talent was there, the technical ability was there for that game. One thing I would say as well, if you're a Numancia fan and you're leaving the stadium after that performance and that result, you're thinking this top flight's not all, it's not that difficult, is
easy.
it? We've just beaten Barcelona, 1-0. But it was certainly a well deserved result, I'd say. And anybody who's read any of the books really on Pep Guardiola's coaching and managerial career will know that this game, much like the opening couple of games for him as Barca B coach, was a real learning experience for him, and it did give him a moment or two where he really did reflect on his philosophy, and it was another occasion where he decided to have a conversation um, with his mentor, Johan Cruyff, and his other mentor, who often doesn't get mentioned, Juan Malio, who actually went on
Mm,
to be Pep's assistant at Manchester City for a brief time as well.
mm.
Yeah, this was a wake up call for the Barcelona team, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, it didn't necessarily derail him too much, did it? In terms of, he's had a pretty decent career
But yeah,
after
it didn't
this.
knock him back, Yeah, he did all right afterwards, didn't he?
Yeah,
But I mean,
he's not.
maybe he owes Numancia a lot of credit for the trajectory of his career beyond that. Who knows? The
Yeah,
butterfly effect and all that.
sometimes you just need a little wake up call, don't you? And obviously, the success he goes on to have pretty much instantaneously, this season, the season after in Europe as well, a lot can be sort of put onto um, his time in Numancia, just to that little spark, just to get him going, just to make sure, that he's
Yeah,
aware and he's going with it.
that's it. That wake up call. I mean, I have a friend actually who I won't name, but he funny story. He was doing his driving test and got asked to leave the car park, to start the test. And on his way out of the test center car park at the beginning of his test, he scraped the car down the gate of the car park and just turned to the instructor and said, "That was a bit of a wake up call." Um, so it doesn't always work out because he was then asked to get out of the car. So
Yeah,
you know,
it's a good job Pep Guardiola wasn't asked to leave Numancia on his own. You say you stay here after that
yeah,
performance. That was shambolic. But there must have been
yeah,
if you're a Barcelona fan at that time, and again you take that rhetoric of oh well, are we taking a bit of a gamble here on this former star? Because again, Barca B, people will naturally assume that he went to Barca B and it was all milk and honey. It really wasn't, was it? It wasn't the spectacle that you saw from Pep Guardiola in charge of the first team. So again, there must have been a lot of skepticism about his appointment. And then after this first 90 minutes, where you come away from a newly promoted side, as with respect to Numancia, as small as they are, with the players he had on that pitch, 25 attempts on goal he had in this game with Messi, Eto, Henry up front. You must be thinking, oh God, we're in for a long season here, but you know,
yeah.
famous
And
last
don't
words, aren't they?
forget the likes of Cruyff and Cheeky Bergerstein had, put their reputation by saying to the club hierarchy in this team. So there was quite a lot to go over with that.
Yeah, definitely. And like we say, it all turned out fine in the end, and now he's on sabbatical once again, and we'll wait to see where Pep possibly pops up next. The next game I want to talk about is one where I think we're all going to have a little bit of a thought on this because I think, some of us will claim to have been following Spanish football for a little bit longer. Most people from the UK who follow Spanish football probably can put their interest down to one moment, and that is when England captain David Beckham decided to leave Old Trafford and move to the Santiago Bernabeu. He made his debut in the 30th of August in 2003. And like I say, it was one that I think the world was watching. If I remember rightly, Paul, and again, forgive me, I must have only been about 11 at the time. I'm pretty sure they put this game on ITV or the BBC or something. I'm sure it went free to air so people could watch David Beckham in his debut game for Real Madrid. I might be talking complete bullshit there, and I've dreamed it,
Yes, it was.
but I feel like I watched it, and I don't feel like my mum paid for Sky Sports back then.
No, I think you might be right. I can't remember. It may have been ITV. I don't know if they showed the whole game or just the highlights, but I
Mm,
do remember there being footage shown on the telly, free to on well, we used to call them terrestrial channels, didn't we? The free to air
terrestrial.
channels.
Yeah, yeah.
I know. No, that is showing our age by using the word terrestrial, isn't it? Really, I suppose. um, yeah, I do remember that. Because it was such a big thing as well, and don't forget as well, this is so. I mean, the Premier League's in its 10th or 11th season at the time, um, and a lot of people in England who are our age or around that were pretty much under the impression that the Premier League was the pinnacle, the be all and end all, and that there wasn't really much that existed outside of it from a footballing point of view, and we couldn't understand really why somebody would want to go and play abroad because I mean, don't get me wrong, there are certainly some people nowadays who are fully grown adults that think that football doesn't exist outside the Premier League, but um, back then as kids, as we were, um, I do remember it being such a huge deal. And yeah, there was definitely some televised footage that was shown. I can't remember for the life of me if it was the full game or if it was just like the highlights, but it definitely was on one of the free to air channels.
Yeah, I just have this vision of me like, and the thing is as well is that I'm not a Manchester United fan. I'm not an England supporter. But I just genuinely loved anything that David Beckham did. I was very much in the Golden Balls hype. Golden Balls deep, as they would say, at the time. but
Brilliant.
I just remember sitting in front of the telly like with a bag of sweets and on a cushion, just watching David Beckham, make his debut for Real Madrid, and some debut it was as well. Because again, he's obviously left Manchester United. He's had the fallout with Ferguson. He's been offered to Barcelona. Barcelona really wanted him. He's rejected that completely out hand. Said there's only one place I want to go, and that is to be at Real Madrid with the likes of Luis Figo, with the likes of Zinedine Zidane, Ronaldo, Steve McManaman, and he's gone there. And he makes his debut against Real Betis at the Santiago Bernabeu. I remember him walking out, and he had his. It was the Beckham era where he'd grown his hair out, so he had it up in like a
Yeah.
little blonde, tiny pony type thing. And again, as far as debuts go, he must have thought, I've absolutely smashed this because we're within 3 minutes of being on the pitch. There's some fantastic interplay between Luis Figo and Ronaldo, the OG Ronaldo, um, sort of around the edge of the box. Ronaldo squares it across the face of goal, and that's exactly where you'd think, maybe Raul would be hiding, or maybe even like a Guti as the more advanced playmaker. Beckham just comes storming in. He's got the absolute space of the Bernabeu in front of him, and he just taps it in from about 6 yards. But
Yeah.
I just remember him wheeling away, and I must have been thinking, right, here we go. This is David Beckham showing Spanish football how it's done. He's going to have an absolutely brilliant time in Spain. And I think overall, we can say that he did. But it never looked as easy for him as it did in that game, did it?
No, I think that's a fair assessment of it. You know, it's a brilliant ball that comes in, isn't it? And there was just there was this sort of eruption, wasn't there, from the crowd, and you could see the players around. It felt like, oh, he's arrived very promptly. You know, um, it was, yeah. And you watch it back now, and you can still. And they don't make crowds like that anymore, do they?
No.
Really? The game has changed a fair bit since then. Um, yeah, it's a moment of just there's just this pure energy going on, isn't there? Where you can feel it. The roar from the Bernabeu crowd is unique, and yeah, as a like you say, I'm by no means a Manchester United fan, and yeah, so it wasn't that I was necessarily as emotionally invested as maybe some other people were. But even now watching it, there is something special about that just to watch it back. But it comes on the fact that it's August 2003, and Beckham's career in general has gone from an England point of view with all of the storylines, and there's been numerous. This is the point where he's a superstar, isn't he? He's a
Mm,
celebrity as much as he is an exceptional footballer. His profile is probably at the highest it was for his entire playing career. I'd say, or maybe that's a little bit harsh, but um, that was the point where everybody knew who David Beckham was. I remember the 2002 World Cup, just 12 months earlier. Um, Obviously we've spoke before about how we all got to watch that Brazil game on the television that was on wheels that had been dragged into a room at school and everything like that. But if you remember as well, whenever they were interviewing fans, because it was in Japan and South Korea, wasn't it? All of the locals absolutely loved David Beckham.
oh
Even
yeah, obsessed with
the
him.
yeah, he is huge in Asia, and this was at that point where genuinely he was one of the biggest football names in the world at the time when there was obviously Ronaldo was considered probably the greatest player in the world, but Beckham was the brand in the world of
Mm.
football, wasn't he? So yeah, it had all eyes on him, and it was a special moment.
And I think that's a big thing I take from it because I hold no bars when I say again self-admitted golden balls deep
Hmm.
that David Beckham will never be spoken about in the same levels as prime Ronaldo, Messi, Zidane, etc. But at that moment in time, when he's celebrating with the likes of Luis Figo, Zidane, Ronaldo, Raul, he is a Galactico, isn't he? On
Yeah,
a player level,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you can see how happy that sort of like makes him, and he's really looks like he's amongst his equals that way. And again, sitting back and watching that, whether it was the full show, whether it was like the highlights reel on ITV digital or something like that, but I just remember looking at that and going, this is really one of my first proper tastes of Galacticos as well. You're looking at. I'd heard of Zidane, I'd heard of Luis Figo, I'd played, FIFA 2003, I'd played World Cup '98 with them. I knew who they were, but I'd never really sat and watched them.
Hmm.
And just seeing Beckham play alongside them, and this wasn't a classic game when you watch it back. It's not as if they've rip roared through Real Betis and won 5-0. They've eked past them at 2-1.
Yeah.
Juanito gets an equaliser after about half an hour, and then Ronaldo scores the winner after about an hour. They've not run riot, but it felt like there was a majesty to it because you were seeing these players. You were seeing Florentino Perez's Galacticos all play together for the first time, and they do look the business. There's no two ways about that, and it was great to see David Beckham get on the score sheet in his debut game as well, with what will always be fondly remembered as a great time. with the club for him as well, despite some of his adversions that he had before he signed for LA Galaxy too. So yeah, proper football. Um, which leads me on to sort of like the next discussion. We've already brought up Ronaldo as a debut person. Um, there's also Ronaldinho, so I kind of want to couple these Brazilians together because I want to speak about Ronaldo, but I don't want to speak about his Barcelona debut. I want to talk about his Real Madrid debut here as well because the circumstances that he comes to Real Madrid, I can never really put my finger on it, Paul. I don't know how you feel about this, but I can never really put my finger on whether he was sort of signed as a Galactico, or he was signed as a Galactico for the commercial reasons because he was sort of like that top player. It kind of felt like we weren't getting the prime R9 necessarily when he signed for Real Madrid, were we?
Yeah, well, he'd had, yeah. I mean, we've discussed the Galactico periods before on previous episodes, and you know, never discount the commercial factor behind the signings and the logic. But yeah, I mean, don't forget he'd obviously had spells at Barcelona, went to Inter Milan. Right, thinking as well, he'd had a few injuries at this point, hadn't he? And
Yeah, yeah,
people were doubting if he was still the same phenomenal
mm.
that
He'd had
he'd
that
been labelled.
really bad knee
Um,
injury at Inter as well, didn't he?
yeah, that was it. Yeah. And in fact, if you think about it from again to go back to the World Cup 12 months earlier, 2002 World Cup, more people spoke about Ronaldinho than they did Ronaldo.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, he's making a big move from one huge club, this bit in Italy, to um, you know, one of the biggest that you can move to. And it's with the backdrop that obviously he previously played for Barcelona, so he's crossing that divide. But I think it's more, he's because he'd had such a disrupted time through injury, and the doubts had crept in about him, and some people thinking he's not perhaps the player he once was. Physical condition, I remember it was
Mm.
questioned. Was this as well when weren't they saying about his weight when he signed that he was a bit bulkier than
Yeah, yeah,
expected. So yeah, he had a lot to sort of, or would need to make a big point in order to prove some of the doubters wrong,
yeah.
wouldn't he? Um,
Yeah, he did have lots to prove. Obviously, he's come back off, winning the World Cup. But like you say, he wasn't the focal point necessarily that he could have been. He was still very, very good, but he seemed to, harmonise more of the team in comparison to say some of the other Brazilian strikers who have really taken, tournaments by the grip. And he signs for Real Madrid, as you mentioned, crossing that divide, and very much as a commercial option, I find, and that the football, if it works out, it works out. It's obviously again taken him a little bit while to get to his debut. So bear in mind, some of the other debuts we've talked about with, saying 30th of August, 1st
yeah,
September. This is well into October that he makes his debut for Real Madrid, and he comes off the bench as well, which I find interesting. So he appears, from the bench on the 63rd minute, and I think this is where maybe people held their breath ever so slightly and went, right, who are we going to get here? Is
yeah,
this going to be Prime R9, or is this going to be a cameo act where we see, we've seen it many times before, especially at Real Madrid, where players just aren't the same. Whereas when they get there, who are we to judge Paul at that time? Because I tell you what, he comes off the bench here and he puts in possibly one of the greatest half an hour debuts you will ever see, and his first goal is within 60 seconds of him coming on the pitch. A really brilliant, well worked goal. Takes it on his chest, and then all of a sudden he's got so much space and he just knocks it past the goalkeeper, the Alaves keeper in the net, and it's prime R9. That's exactly what you've bought him for. That's the Brazilian Ronaldo that you want, and it's absolutely spectacular. He then follows that up with a second goal shortly after as well, assisted by Steve McManaman. What a really nice slotted finish into the bottom corner. And as they say, the rest is history here, isn't it, for Ronaldo? Because I don't think we ever see that burst of pace from him that made him the player that we love at Barcelona and at Inter. But what you get here is a maybe more of a mature, thoughtful Ronaldo. You know, who basically is a guaranteed goal scorer. But you've got to play his way now. He's not going to necessarily run past every single person in front of him, but he's got a cultured finish, and he will use that to his best advantage. It's kind of, I want to say R9 2.0. Would that be fair?
I think there's something to that. Yeah, it's. I mean, the first goal is why he was one of the most prolific and dangerous players to play against, because he has absolute ice in his veins when he's
Mm,
in with a chance. He always made a clinical finish out of nothing, or just he got the basics right when there was pressure on him. It was, like I say, it was a calmness where most people would act on adrenaline. He just seemed to have this natural coolness about his finishing, which is, yeah, they have to start playing to his strengths, I suppose. And I don't think this might sound a little bit lost on some people as a comparison, but do you know how certainly like towards like the 2015-16 season, where Luis Suarez is at Barcelona, and it's going to sound like a bit sort of disrespectful, but effectively his legs had gone at that point, really. But
mm,
Barcelona, they adapted. It was the MSN era, but he could still finish, and it was a case of don't make Suarez run. Instead, give him the ball in either in the tight spaces or on the shoulder of the defender, and he will, he'll find the back of the net. It was a bit like that for me. That's the closest sort of comparison I can give you
mm,
as to what we saw with Ronaldo in that era at Real Madrid. But obviously they are two very different type of players. I'm just comparing it in terms of the natural finishing ability still being there, the ruthlessness, the coolness, ice in the veins in front of goal, whilst not necessarily having the same level of mobility as they previously had. But he did
mm.
remind everybody um, who he was and what a great goal scorer he was just in that 30-minute debut, and a Steve McManaman assist, which I keep saying, I think I said at the beginning that losing track of which episodes we have recorded and which ones we have intended to record, and we do need to do McManaman in Madrid at some point.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. He walked so David Beckham could run, but
Yeah,
and I
and
do like your comparison with Suarez as well. To be fair, but the thing I'll really give a props to, as the kids would say, to Ronaldo is Suarez had obviously Messi and Neymar supporting him, and it was tactically thought out in terms of how they would approach utilizing Suarez as a so-called fox in the box type thing.
hmm,
Tactically, at this time, Real Madrid, they didn't have him. They didn't have tactics. It was just overwhelm and overpower your opponent. Very much what we spoke about with Galacticos 3.0 on La Cronica this week. So
hmm,
Ronaldo had to really make moments of his own choosing it. And I think you see that in that first goal he scores for Real Madrid where, the cross isn't great. But he takes it down on his chest in a way only a Brazilian knows how to do. And he
yeah,
engineers an opportunity for himself. And you see a lot of that from Ronaldo in his time during with Real Madrid. And as the legs start to go, as like you say, the focus starts to drift, and towards the end with Ronaldo at Real Madrid, we're seeing a very, very jaded version of the mercurial Brazilian, and but you still get those glimpses with him, and I think that's what makes Ronaldo so magical, if that makes sense. And again, if you want to go back and watch this clip, there's some brilliant videos of it on YouTube and Facebook and things like that. We'll definitely put one out there on the back of this episode.
hmm.
But yeah, absolutely spectacular as a debut. But then I'm going to jump to the aforementioned Ronaldinho as well, Paul, and I'm going to ask you, what do you think the most unique thing about this debut actually is? Is it Ronaldinho or is it something else?
It, well, I mean, in reality, it's something else, isn't it? Something that's quite unique to him. But yeah, he's still excellent, and I don't want to I don't want to labor this one too much because it features as a chapter in the brilliant book Once Upon a Time in La Liga by our friend Brendan Madden. Um, you know, but yeah, I'll let you tell everybody what the
So Ronaldinho obviously comes to Barcelona, and by the way, if you've not watched the Ronaldinho documentary on Netflix yet, do yourself a favor, carve out a good 3 hour, 4 hour window, just watch them back to back. Push past the dubbing. It will annoy you that Ronaldinho has seemingly this weird kind of like almost like Southern Texan accent on the face of it. Push past that, just let it happen. Watch it, and it is brilliant. And you'll see a lot of him before this game, in fact, and sort of the thoughts and processes around it. And what makes this game really unique is the fact that Ronaldinho makes his debut for Barcelona at 5 past midnight on a Tuesday, Wednesday morning. It works out to be. So if I remember rightly, there was some, and this is going to sound very professional, there was some bollocks that went on that happens in Spanish football from time to time. Barcelona wanted to rearrange a game. Sevilla wouldn't let them, so Barcelona, who were the home side, got to pick when kickoff happened essentially, and said, "Fine, if you want to be knobs about it, we'll kick off at 5 past midnight. How does that sound?" And so they did. 80,000 fans into the Camp Nou to watch a game at, and again, I'm saying like, games going past midnight is strange in Spain. The Copa del Rey final does it every single year at the moment. Um, but it's a very unique because we get to see the much anticipated Ronaldinho, who's just signed from PSG. He's come in as the alternative to David Beckham as well, the aforementioned. And on his debut, this is where you get to see sort of the Joga Benito in action up front. And again, a lot of people pin Barca's hopes on him, sort of like reviving the club when they were at a bit of a low ebb. And boy, does he demonstrate exactly what he's going to do in this game. And this opening goal that he scores, where in true Ronaldinho fashion, he picks the ball up about, I want to say, just over the halfway line, skips past two players with absolute ease. And then you think, right, well, he's going to either make a pass or he's going to try and get a little bit closer to goal and put an effort in. That's just not Ronaldinho. He absolutely hoofs it into the back of the goal from about 35 yards out. It comes off just the underside of the bar pole, and it's a brilliantly spectacular opening goal. And again, what makes it so unique is that he's doing this when the rest of the world is basically asleep. In only a way that
yeah
Spanish football can.
yeah yeah. Do you know I feel like some of these late kickoffs. I mean, obviously this is an exceptional case, but I feel like some of the late kickoffs seem to have disappeared over the last couple of years from Spanish football. Because I mean, I can remember that we used to get the 10 o'clocks and even the 11 o'clocks, didn't we, at times? Um, maybe with the current heat wave that we're having in 2026, we might see a return to that at some point. But yeah, no, it was. I think it added to the occasion, didn't it? That I said that the circumstances around it certainly added to the enormity and the spectacle itself, and yeah, shook the ground, didn't it? When the goal goes in.
Yeah, and again, going back to his documentary, the way he speaks about how he was, that how that goal was celebrated, and the roar that he got from the Camp Nou crowd, sort of comparing it to what he had back at Gremio, for example, where it felt a lot more like home, and he speaks about how he instantly felt at home at that moment, which when you score a goal like that, I'd be making it my house altogether. I'd feel like you're in my house now, and it's just absolutely a benchmark for what we saw from Ronaldinho, because before Messi, before Neymar, before all those, like, Ronaldinho was the man. He was the Ballon d'Or winner. He was the face of the franchise, as they say,
Yeah,
and he was just absolutely epic. And a lot of people will talk about who made them truly fall in love with football, and for me, Ronaldinho is that player. Ronaldinho is the player who, you know, took this young boy who, really appreciated a good solid right back in the form of Steve Finnan and went, actually, I could be a Diogo Benito football player. I could do step overs. I can do rainbow flicks. He instilled that kind of confidence and some might say, a real sort of lack of reality into you. No,
Yeah.
no boy from Lancashire should be doing rainbow flicks. Let's put it that way.
Well, he made everybody want to try it, and he definitely contributed to the street soccer popularity. I mean, like I say, we had everything going on there. The adverts on the boats, on the ship. There was the
Mm.
advert at the airport. There was the total 90 boots. There was everything taken off all at once. There was also um, the little samba football. They used to do it. They used to show clips of it on. I don't know if it was Soccer AM, but they used to show beach football and people flicking it over and futsal. That's it. I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the word. Futsal. It kind of created like um, an awakening to people for people, particularly in Western Europe, that existed, and yeah,
yeah. What was it that
um,
on Soccer AM? Was it Street School or something like that? They used to do where they
yeah,
used to
that
get
was it on
academy
it. Yeah.
kids that they were doing. I remember seeing Raheem Sterling on that when he was at QPR, and
QPR,
yeah,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
got it. I also then saw Jordan Henderson do it in a pair of really white dad trainers, which apparently are cool now. But I just remember going, nah, that's not the same, is it? But he did have that kind of, like I say, he was a cultural phenomenon, was it? And even to this day, we've spoken about both the Brazilians now. They both drove out in the World Cup final
yeah.
with Madonna on the back of the car. Looked like it was against their will, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. But anything for a payday. But these two Brazilians, Ronaldo and Ronaldinho, at the same time having these kind of debuts, it was really, really special, wasn't it? And I think we just can't speak enough
Yeah.
about them. And I'm sure we'll definitely go back to doing a proper Ronaldo episode and
I
revisit Ronaldinho again.
Yeah, this won't be the only time, maybe even this season, that we cover these boys, lads.
Absolutely not.
Ah,
The
why have I just
lads,
said
the lads, the
that?
lads. We'll have to find out what Portuguese is for the lads, and that'll be the episode title for when we do that. Um, Lastly, but certainly not leastly, and I appreciate as well, listeners. So this has been quite a heavy Real Madrid Barcelona episode because a lot of just the crazy stuff and the brilliant debuts seem to happen with them. However, we're now going to talk about something that happened against them, which is quite nice. And I'm obviously referring to Athletic Club against Barcelona in 2019. So very much bringing up to the shop window glass of nostalgia.
Yeah.
2019. Barcelona defending their title on the opening game of the season. They've had an absolutely brilliant season before. We're obviously talking prime Messi as well. Really, a lot of decent players here. And they go up to Athletic Club. They go up to the Catedral Samimez, and they get the shock of a lifetime because it really does not go their way in this match. However, there is one player who is just an absolute legend of the game who it's like he had written this down before the match, didn't he? I'm going to do a Chilena against Barcelona, give them their first defeat on the opening game of the season since Numancia, let's not forget, and ruin the party and basically set the tone for their season. We spoke about how Pep Guardiola learned from that mistake. This season, really not great for Barcelona, and it started with this absolutely spectacular Artisadores goal at San Mamés, didn't it?
It absolutely did, and I remember, and this, I don't know if this is just like there might be some sort of, I don't know. You could probably, if somebody who's cleverer than I am would be able to say there's some sort of psychoanalysis that explains why I feel or remember this in this particular way. But I remember watching this game live, if I'm right in thinking, it was the last game of the match day on the opening weekend. Was it the
Yes,
Monday
yeah.
night? So this is 2019. This is before the pandemic, but it's the start of the season, and it really, really felt when this goal went in and this full time whistle went here that this is going to be a great season. 2019-20, it's going to be a fantastic season for football. Um, obviously, the world changed halfway through this season, which there's a reason why I mentioned that now. Actually, but this goal just took the roof off San Mames, as you say. Aritz Aduriz, a legendary striker who'd been involved in Spanish football and a range of clubs. He was at Real Mallorca as well at one point. 38 years old here. Yeah, it's an audacious goal, and it's a phenomenal goal. Even it don't take his age out of the equation. Any striker is going to be proud of that. But the fact that he did it at 38 years old as well just makes it all the more,
He had no right, did he? He had no. And I kid you not, and I was explaining to you before we came on air that I've been helping decorate my daughter's bedroom this weekend because she's 9 on Wednesday, and I kid you not, I turned my neck slightly too fast this week, and I have been in agony all week, and I'm only 35, so for him to do that at
yeah.
38 years old, he was either running on adrenaline or he spent the next 6 days in essentially a comatose state with maybe like loads of packs of peas just all over his body because it must have broke him. Surely at 38 years old to do that.
Well, it's funny you should say that. I mean, it actually features this goal and this game features in the Netflix series. It was Netflix. It's either Netflix or Amazon. I'm fairly certain it's Netflix. Is it called Six Dreams or something like that?
Yeah, yeah,
Where
yeah, yeah.
they were following. So obviously, Alderizzi's had a number of serious injuries, predominantly around his legs and his knee, I think. And this turns out to be the final goal of his career because, as I say, what was it now? Was it the February or the first week of March? I think it was the February. Later in the season, the everything stopped, didn't it, for
Mm,
because of COVID? And I'm fairly certain not long after this game, or was it even in this game, he does end up missing a significant chunk of the season through injury. And then by the time he's looking to recover, the world has stopped, and he
mm,
actually announces his retirement tragically during the middle of the pandemic when nobody's there to really, because we weren't allowed in stadiums, football wasn't even taking place. It was, everybody was told to stay at home and etc. He didn't really necessarily get the the, the end to his career from a celebratory point of view there and then that perhaps he should have done. And who knows, if it wasn't for the fact that everything had been put on pause because of COVID, he may have powered through at least until the end of that season,
mm,
rather than choosing to get or bringing forward his surgery. And if you do follow that documentary series, that the camera crew go with him after that game and then during his treatment and stuff, and you can see that actually for a long while he's been playing through pain. So he
mm,
scores this goal whilst he's managing his pain. But listen, if there's one way to sign off your career, a 89th minute bicycle kick against the reigning champions at San Mamés as a 38-year-old Adariz.
yeah.
It's the match-winning goal on the opening day of the season. What better way to sign off, I suppose, from a playing point of view?
It really doesn't get much better than that, to be fair. And like you say, I think in hindsight, if you was to ask him how he wanted to go out, that's probably exactly the way he wants to be remembered as well. And Matt Harrison, who obviously contributes to this podcast, he wrote a absolutely brilliant article for Revista del Partido not too long ago, which is definitely worth a read, where he waxes lyrical about that goal as well. And I think when we look at that, and and I struggle with the how time works, and I can't really wrap my head around the fact that that was over 6 years ago now,
You don't,
when the
don't. It's
pandemic
frightening.
happened. It is terrifying. But the thing I take away from that mostly is that since Aduri's retired, Athletic Club just haven't been able to replace him, and obviously they have this, you know, they have the Cantera philosophy, which is only recruiting players of Basque origins or connections to the Basque country, which obviously limits their reach. But there hasn't really been a striker of his ilk, or someone who is as reliable as he was for goal scoring, that has come through either the Atletico Cantera or any of the other teams worth of note that they could pick them up from. They
Mm.
brought in, Sanadi, for example, from, he was on loan at Baracaldo. He was originally with Alaves. So there are these. They are looking, but there isn't anyone who has been that level of Adoris in over 6 years, which is just again mind-boggling to think from an athletic club perspective, who have had some brilliant strikers over the last 100 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, he's going to go down. Well, he was already going to go down as a legend anyway, wasn't he? But this goal and that image of him just framed in the in the floodlights, it's just iconic, isn't it now? And
Hmm.
you think as well that I would imagine if I'm Athletic Club, and there's been lots of conversations over the years about the need for them to have a natural striker, and obviously they've got their own philosophy. They are unique in the world in that sense. Um, that picture of Aduriz hanging in the air with his boot about to make contact with that ball, I'd put that up in the youth academy centres and say, look,
Well,
just continue to dream.
I'm just noting here, Paul, just looking at our respective backgrounds. You've got a little space in your wall just there. You
Oh
could
yeah,
get a framed picture of Adoris there, and underneath San Pellegrini on the wall here, there's just a little bit of space. I can move the books, it's fine. I might get that there as well, because it is an iconic image as well, isn't it? Like I say, there are so many that define Spanish football, but there isn't many that have the story that goes with that goal as well. And the
yeah.
fact it was, on the opening game of the season, it was his last goal for the club, and in the manner that he did it, you just can't get better than that. So yeah, and if you don't have any clue what we're talking about, go watch the clip. We'll put it onto our social media so you can relive the glory of that game as well. Paul, it's been absolutely brilliant once again. Obviously, a bit unusual to our usual episodes, but we thought again it'd be good fun to start the new season, to celebrate the reopening of La Liga this weekend with this kind of episode. So it's been brilliant to talk to you and relive some of those core memories of why we fell in love with Spanish football for these crazy opening debuts.
Absolutely. Yeah, great way to start the season. Obviously we are, knocking the microphone over, talking about interesting first starts of the season games. Bit rusty, but glad to be back. Looking forward to what this season holds in Spanish football, and from an El Partido perspective. Great to be back at it. And yeah, catch you all later.
Absolutely, yes. And Paul is referring to, obviously, we've got so much stuff going on now. Go check out the social medias to keep up to date with all the stuff we're going to be doing this season. But for now, Paul, thank you so much. I shall speak to you very, very soon. And to you guys at home, once again, cheers for all your support. We'll catch you next time here on El Partido. Hasta luego.